Thank you. I'm quite honored to be here. My name's Ethan. I'm a botanist. I do all my work in the Bahamas. This is a talk about what we do, but it's also a story of what happened there. The story I'm going to tell you is not a long story. So it's not a long story. We don't go back that very far, only about 10 years from conception to where we are today. But let's get started. So the Big Indian Archipelago, you're probably familiar with it from maps. It is just right off of Florida by Cuba and just above Hispaniola. It's a large archipelago. From the bottom here at Turks and Caicos to the top here in Grand Bahama, it's almost 1,000 kilometers. When you're talking about latitude from the bottom to the top, it's over 650 kilometers. So we get a lot of variation. But as widespread as the archipelago is, there's small islands. There's not a lot of land mass. They are very low-lying islands. They're carbonate. The highest point in the entire archipelago is right here on Cat Island at 60 meters. Over 60% of the archipelago is less than 5 meters in elevation. So I think you guys probably automatically know what our biggest existential threat is to the entire country. Now, one of the problems that we don't have is the level of diversity. Is that a problem? No. But in terms of understanding the archipelago, there's not as many species as there are in places like Cuba. There's only about 1,400 species, and the reasons are we don't have a lot of elevation, and these islands disappear about every 100,000 years with sea level change. So where I'm going to talk about is going to be this island right here, and what we did here on Eleuthera. So the story starts here. This is Shelby White and Leon Levy. They are New Yorkers. They had been coming to the island of Eleuthera since the 1960s and bought a house there in the 1980s. They would come down from New York, Manhattan, about 5 or 6 times a year. Leon did very well. And when I say very well, add a lot of zeros to that very, very well. They loved Eleuthera. They loved the Bahamas. They are big supporters of the New York Botanical Garden and the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, involved with that type of world. Had always talked about doing something on Eleuthera. It's just one of these ideas. Very, very philanthropic. Unfortunately, Leon passed away in 2003. And after a couple of years, his wife, Shelby, was traveling in Nassau, the capital, and came to the headquarters of Bahamas National Trust. Bahamas National Trust is an NGO organization that runs the national park system. There's 32 national parks in the Bahamas, covering about 2.2 million acres of land and sea, spread across 11 different island groups. So she was at the retreat headquarters, and it's about a 3-hectare site, and was walking around, and there were trails and palms there, and she thought to herself, you know, that idea I had for a botanical garden, I kind of like what you did here. And she walked up to the front door, and knocked on the front door, and walked on in and said, hey, you guys want to go build a botanical garden on Eleuthera? And they were like, who are you, lady? She's like, don't worry, I have all the money I need to do this, so come on over. And that was in late 2005. I flew over and met her in March of 2006, and she tasked me with searching out good pieces of land to do 3 things. Showcase native plants, showcase the history of bush medicine in the Bahamas, and as a site that we can use for early childhood education. Now, as a taxonomist and a botanist who's been running around the Bahamas, I was, of course, thrilled. Went and started searching for pieces of land. Got a piece of land. We bought 25 acres, about 11 hectares of land. This took about 3 years to develop. We broke ground in 2009. We spent 26 months doing our phase 1 and opened our doors to the public in March of 2011. And then did a phase 2 build out. So let me show you some of the things that we built. So this is our 25-acre site. We put in a number of structures that I'll go through. Now on this site, what we like about it is most of what you see down here and all of this area, totally intact, dry Caribbean forest. Beautiful palms, beautiful big trees, orchids, bromeliads, tons of diversity on it. This area here was very, very heavily disturbed. There'd been farming on it, there'd been a lot of trash and debris, invasive species, things like that. So out of 25 acres, we had about 22 acres of perfect forest, about another acre of mangroves, and then 2 acres that were totally worthless. So we built a welcome center, so people could come in, This is our gift shop. We put in about 100 meters of boardwalk for our mangroves. We put in medicinal beds to showcase the traditions of bush medicine there. We were able to talk with a number of locals and get that information. There's been a few dissertations that have come out as well. We built an education pavilion so we could bring in classrooms and teach them about plants and birds. We throw a pretty good Halloween party, Christmas party, things like that. We converted an old cistern into a freshwater wetland, just so that we could grow freshwater plants. We put in an edible history. We had this beautiful red soil that was in a pocket area, so we wanted to showcase the traditions of farming there and talk about it and how plants got to the Bahamas. We put in a lath house, and this is what I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about just a moment, to be able to grow plants. We put in an observation tower at the top of our highest hills, and you can get up above the vegetation. You can see what's around, it allows you to get into the canopy. We put in a weather station so that we can monitor the climate, doing 7 variables, and we're doing them in very fine increments, just so we can see where patterns arise over time. We have installed 3 permanent forest plots. These are 20 meter by 20 meter plots. All the trees are marked. And then in one of them, we stuck a set of sensors in so we can do temperature, relative humidity, and radiant light at the forest floor. And then we put in about 1.5 miles, 2 kilometers of hiking trail and through our just intact forest. We have these beautiful pseudo-phoenix forests in the back. Just really nice stuff. So we talk about our science and conservation program just a little bit, primarily focusing on our horticulture program. Global strategy for plant conservation. This is just the okay, yeah, this is what we do. This is why we do it. So we buy in fully into the global strategy. This is implemented in our strategic planning, in our mission statement. Almost everything we do follows around the global strategy. Now, some of this we can do with the Levy Preserve as an organization, such as the ex situ conservation, stuff like that. But there's a lot that we need to do at the National Trust level, where we're creating parks and doing some of the larger scale stuff. Now, will we hit all the 2020 goals? No. Will we be on the right direction for all of them by 2020? Yes. Some of them we will complete. So target 8, the horticulture target, this is something we bought into, again, very, very strongly for our lath house. This is everything that we do that we grow, and we are looking to implement this. So it's not a very large structure. We are always faced with the balance at our site between form and function. Miss White has taste, and everything there has to be done in a certain way, and form oftentimes does trump our function. And that I would have loved to have 3 times as much space and far more table space, but there was a look that we needed to have, and we work with that. So, so at the lath house, we're doing everything in essentially 1 meter pots, 1.5 meter pots, and then when they get to a certain size, we move them up to a nursery area, and we're just building stocks of trees and shrubs, both endemics, but just some of the most common species so that we can go in and do restoration projects. As we built our lath house, we brought in Jason Lopez from Fairchild Tropical Gardens. He's the living collections manager and did training with all our staff on running the lath house, seed collections, things like that. So what are our general policies? How do we collect for this program? So we want all the endemic plants. There are 89 endemic plants in the Bahamas. Our goal is to have them all in our collection and in production. We'd like to have all the other species within each genus that has an endemic plant. We'd like to have 1 representative of every family within the archipelago. And the overall goal is to have 50% of the diversity of the entire country represented at our site. And then the last would be start focusing on the shared endemics between Cuba and the Bahamas and Hispaniola and the Bahamas. If you haven't realized, I'm a taxonomist. I'm a collector. I want to have sets. And then, again, the common species, so that we can go out and we can do restoration projects. We're lucky. We just published a paper in 2014. We went in and reviewed the endemics of the Bahamas. We went through the herbarium specimens. We went through the literature. We unfortunately lowered our number of endemics. That there were a lot that we do share with Hispaniola and Cuba and stuff like that. But we have 89. Of that 89, though, 30 are known just to a single island, like the Xenia lugana that was talked about. That's known only from Long Island. The land that it's on is entirely privately owned. Our ability to establish a national park there is 0. And that's true of a lot of those 30 single island endemics. And even with the double island endemics, those are very small populations. So those are our big focus. No one has done any red listing species in the Bahamas other than single individual species like the Zamia, so that's a big thing that we want to focus in on. But in general, we consider things that are at such low distributions to be the ones that we want to focus on, regardless of whether they're listed or not. We do in situ conservation. This was a great piece of land. It had 5 species that were already naturally growing there. So we just keep them growing and keep them going. And then based on our work on the endemics, we can break the Bahamas into 3 zones, and then we're collecting out of each of those 3 zones to bring in. We will do whole plant collections, things like orchids and stuff like that, where we either will go pull them out. We have specific areas like beds that plants are put in, but because so much of our site is just natural and intact, we do a lot of like collecting the species and then just putting them out into the forest, putting a label on them and letting them grow and do their things. We do a lot from seed. I would like to do more from seed. We're limited in how much space that we have. And then always the issues of what do you do when you have endemic vines? What do you do with an endemic vine when you have 50 of them? So currently, what do we have? Of the 89, we have living in our collection, 35 of those. We will look to increase that. You know, the first 60, 70% of the species are easy to get. It's that last 20 or 30% that are the most difficult. The annuals are difficult to deal with. We will work to have that. I have a budget for collecting, so this is something that we will likely get done or get very close to by 2020. Successes. So far we collected and have in our collection 6 of the single island endemics and 5 of the double island endemics. So we're making progress. All of them are multiple specimens. I think about Patrick's talk just now and think about how much space I need to do adequate, real genetic conservation. And I don't know if we have the space for all 89. We might. So in general, in our living collections, we started with 182 species at our site, and we're now at 352. We've over doubled it. And so we're on track. Can I get another 348 species by 2020? I'm going to try. Things that we really need to improve on, just in general. Record keeping. We just got BG based this year and did training, so we're beginning our accession program. We're just ordering our embossers so we can actually have tags to track plants. Fully implement this accession program so that we know what we have, where it came from, and that we have those records, that it's not dependent upon my field notes and things like that. And then develop larger stocks, both of the common species and the endemics, so that we can use them for projects. And then again, just implement best practices for ex situ conservation, and that we have that large amount of diversity and specimens. We will struggle. At our site, we went in after construction and we removed all of our invasives and stuff like that. And after construction, we brought in thousands of trees, and I filled every road and every space up and turned it all back into natural areas. So our bed space is quite low, and our ability to actually put stuff out, I may have to end up going back in and taking some areas out just to create the space, or we have to go buy more land. One of the two. So what have we started doing with this stuff? Now, keep in mind, everything I'm telling you right now is the beginning of projects and stuff like that. We are just getting started. This program didn't get fully funded until last year. I've been doing a lot of work, but it was really this last year we had buy-in from Shelby White to fund this and to go forward with it. So what have we started with? We have partnered with the National Art Gallery in Nassau, which is the National Art Gallery, and they had a piece of land right next to them that was completely disturbed and wanted to put in a sculpture garden. And we were partnering with them so that the plants that are in the sculpture garden are all going to be native and are going to be endemic so that we can show it off. What's neat about this site, it's about 200 meters from the seat of government. This is very, very high profile, right in the middle of downtown. They get thousands of visitors to the art gallery every year, and this is an opportunity that we can put these natives out in front of a lot of people in a garden setting to show, hey, you can use these natives to do something really spectacular. We think so. We're doing a lot now general restoration projects. We have tree stocks that we've been growing out for 2 years, so we're able to go into parts where we needed to fill in areas where there had been an old road or something like that, and we were building forests. And then we're going to start a school beautification program. When you're on Eleuthera, so much of Eleuthera is still intact that you go to the school and you say, let's build a forest. And they look out and go, look, I got forest right there. In those cases, we're going to do more actual landscaping with natives, but it's in New Providence, the main capital, where there's very few things in those schools that they can point to, that we're going to do more building forests at those schools. So this is the Nassau Sculpture Garden back in March when we started. This is what it looked like in June as we got clearing, got rid of the ugly fencing, started removing invasives and trash, and now we've started to bring in plants. So over here, this was just last Friday, we shipped over a pallet, and we can put about 60 plants on a pallet. I can get it off of Eleuthera to New Providence in 24 hours. I can get it to another island in 48 hours. So it's fast, we have good boats. In terms of the pallets, this is going to be the development of what we're calling a forest on a pallet project, where we work with schools, develop a location at the school where it's possible, ship over the pallet of plants with the tools, and they can build a small forest at the school with native plants. Our next steps: collect. Again, create new areas for planting to develop both the physical space for planting, but also the habitat. When we're collecting plants from something on Great Inagua in the very, very south, they get less than 50 centimeters of rain per year. We're getting more between 110 to 140. We have to just go with it and build different things for different drainage and stuff like that. Grow as much as we can, as big as we can, as fast as we can. That's what we do. I will say Cuba, Haiti, DR, let's talk.